I am not going to mince words. The BTR5 is competing against cheaper options that do better in every aspect. The BTR5 excels at nothing. We're not talking about minor issues like size and weight. We're talking about the fundamental functionality of the BTR5. It would be easy for me to tell you that the BTR5 is amazing and that you should buy it. That conclusion would be consistent with what other reviewers are saying. But I'm not that type of person. I simply cannot get on to the hype rocket. The Fiio BTR5 is a decent product that is outclassed by the cheaper alternatives. I purchased the BTR5 and have been using it for almost 2 weeks. I used it every day with various IEMs and headphones. I compared the BTR5 with 3 other top contenders, the hifi W3, Earstudio ES100, and Sennheiser UP4. If you already bought the BTR5 and like it, that's great. I'm not trying to dissuade you from enjoying your purchase. Your experience may be different from mine. You might be willing to forgive some of the shortcomings of the product, but I am not, especially when there are cheaper alternatives that do better. Fiio promises that the BTR5 provides audiophile-approved performance, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Fiio says on its website that the BTR5 supports all Bluetooth codecs with streaming resolution up to 96 kHz. Often, you never see this caveat, you just see companies saying the Bluetooth device gives you high-resolution audiophile sound. But Fiio still uses plenty of audiophile nonsense lingo about oscillators and FPGA clocks and DSD support and yada yada yada. Here are the big promises that Fiio makes. The BTR5 provides high-resolution Bluetooth streaming and USB DAC functionality. It has an advanced clock for jitter-free audio, PCM up to 384 kHz and DSD256, and 9 hours of battery. The BTR5's marketing is mostly deceptive. This is not a new concept. The vast majority of audio companies rely upon the customer's lack of knowledge. Fio's promises and subsequent performance of the BTR5 did not impress me. There are several reasons why. Let's go through all of this stuff one by one. The battery life of the BTR5 is no better than the UP4 or the W3. I believe that the ES100's battery life is probably the worst out of all 4 devices, and worst by about an hour of usage. Fiio says the BTR5 will provide 9 hours of battery. Of course, they don't tell you under what circumstances. I think it is fair to conclude that Fiio achieved the 9-hour number by using the most conservative settings. I assume this means you get 9 hours with low volume and the lowest power consuming Bluetooth codec. In regular usage with aptX, aptX HD, AAC, and LDAC, the BTR5 lasts about 6 hours before I need to recharge it. This is consistent with the UP4 and the W3. The ES100, as I said before, usually lasts about 5 hours before I need to recharge it. Over Bluetooth, the sound quality is no different when compared to the other Bluetooth amplifiers like the hifi W3, Earstudio ES100, and the Sennheiser UP4. There are some minor differences between the SBC and aptX HD. And if your device supports LDAC, you'll get slightly higher resolution Bluetooth transmission, but it won't sound anything like actual PCM. And all these codecs are unstable, full of dropouts. Some of the codecs are better at managing dropouts than others, and you may never really notice the inconsistencies depending on your personal usage. The truth is that the BTR5 does not provide better transmission than the $50 hifi W3. None of the devices have noise or distortion under normal conditions, except for the ES100, which distorts to hell when it is being overdriven, but at least the application that the ES100 comes with tells you about that. The BTR5 does not sound better than any of the other Bluetooth devices I mentioned. It merely sounds slightly different. The W3 is on the warmer side, though still very clear and clean. The ES100 is on the more analytical side, lacking some of the bass emphasis of the W3, and it also has higher treble response than the W3. The UP4 is fairly neutral and does not seem to overemphasize any particular frequency. The BTR5 sounds, to be honest, a bit muddy. The BTR5 tries to be neutral and succeeds for the most part. The problem I see is that the BTR5 does not resolve the frequencies well, leading to the muddiness I just mentioned. Doing A and B tests with all the devices showed that the differences are slight. Reviewers have said that the BTR5 sounds amazing. Well, no more amazing than the others in the bunch. Consequently, take everything Zeos and the hype men say with a tub of salt. All 4 of these devices, the W3, ES100, UP4, and BTR5, function as USB devices. They are plug and play. Whether you're on a Mac or a PC, all of these devices show up in the sound preferences. The sonic differences between each DAC while connected via USB are, again, slight. The sound character for each device while connected via USB is frankly the same as when connected over Bluetooth. The issue I see is that the BTR5 is not the clearest of the bunch. It has mediocre bass separation, and in fact, it cannot separate the sub-bass from the mid-bass. It does not produce the bass frequencies as clearly as the UP4 and the ES100. This is true for both USB and Bluetooth transmission. There is no USB DAC functionality with phones or tablets. None of these devices will plug into your Android and iOS device and act like a USB DAC amp. None of these devices are particularly good at driving high-impedance headphones. Indeed, although each device can drive the HD6XX, which is 300 ohms, the drivers needed more power and more consistent power for optimal performance. All four devices drove the HP50 and the HD660S without needing to go to maximum volumes. This is because while on USB power, all of the devices are capable of outputting higher power. The story is this. You can use any of these devices as USB DACs, but do not expect to have the same performance as even the $60 FX Audio DAC X6. Unfortunately, the hype rocket is sending the BTR5 to the moon and beyond. Allow me to pour some cold water on the launch pad. The BTR5's build quality is on par with the W3, ES100, and the UP4. The W3 is the most simple of these devices, but it is sturdy and physically faultless. The ES100's plastic build and very tiny stature make it a hassle to use sometimes. Its buttons are a little too sensitive and stupidly placed. The UP4 is heavier, chunkier, and seemingly more robust than either the W3 or the ES100. Its buttons are wisely placed, and that scroll wheel works perfectly. And it functions as a secondary button, too. The BTR5 feels more like the UP4, but is larger. It has a robustness of the UP4, but does not take advantage of the bigger space. All the buttons on the BTR5 are small and cumbersome to use. The BTR5 inherits the ES100's stupid charging problem as well. Let's say you turn off the BTR5 after use and decide to plug it into the wall for charging. The moment the device realizes it is being charged, it turns back on. When you come back in a few hours to unplug the device, you have to manually turn off the device again. I have on numerous occasions been flustered because I keep forgetting this, or because I was just in a hurry. Neither the W3 nor the UP4 suffer from the same issue. Yes, it may be minor, but it should not occur in the first place. The battery lives of these devices is short enough, and continual charging and recharging further diminishes the battery cycle. It makes no sense at all for Fiio and Ear Studio to allow this to happen. The buttons on the BTR5 aren't great either. The power button, for example, controls all the menu functions on the OLED. Here is a list of the power button's features: power on and off, turn on display, reset the device, activate menu system, activate sub-menu system, exit menu system. There are 3 other buttons on the device, all which do something different. But the power button, the one with the 6 different options that all require different combinations of presses, is the tiniest button out of all of the BTR5. Then you have the volume up and down buttons. These double as the sub-menu selection buttons. These work okay, but they sometimes do not register. On several occasions I have tried increasing the volume using these buttons and gotten frustrated that the volume has not increased or decreased. It's not that I maxed out the volume, but that the buttons are being pressed too quickly. You cannot hold down the volume buttons and expect that the volume will just decrease or increase faster. It doesn't work like that. If you hold down the volume buttons, the songs will either skip forward or backwards. Consequently, you must repeatedly press the volume buttons in succession to adjust the volume. Then there's the issue with the volume step increase. It's barely noticeable. You can sit there and increase the volume from 10 to 20 and not hear a big difference. This has irritated me so much that I've simply increased my source volume. Fiio's volume numbering system makes no sense. Why have 0 to 60? 0 to 60 what? I hate it when companies do this. If they just gave us a decibel readout, that would be much more helpful. As it is, I don't know how many decibels are increased from 10 to 12. The manual doesn't say, for example. And if I were to judge by my ears alone, I'd say each volume step is about 1/3 of a decibel. We should talk about those EQ options, I suppose. Fiio says that there are 4 settings baked into the device that you can adjust through the menu on the unit itself. They all sound pretty bad. Turn on the dance EQ and the bass is so poorly tuned that it becomes muddy, more so than the original muddy sound that comes with the BTR5. Turn on the pop and the vocals become recessed, which is the opposite of what you want. Turn on the rock EQ and the treble is elevated but the bass is decreased, as if Fiio thinks rock music has no drums. No matter which filter you use, the sound is not detailed. Of course, all of this information and toggling is done through Fiio's much lauded OLED screen. You know what? This is an OLED screen. What Fiio gives you is fake OLED. It's faux LED. I have no idea why manufacturers keep doing this. They put a small OLED screen on a device and then make everything look like dot matrix. What's the point? What can the OLED screen offer that cannot more easily be achieved through an application? You have to navigate the tiny screen using the small buttons on the side. It takes longer to navigate through the paltry menu features than it would to just pop over to the Fiio app on your mobile device. But hold on a minute, this doesn't mean that the Fiio app is good. It isn't. It's pretty awful. The W3's app is bare bones and pointless. The UP4 has no app yet. The ES100 has amazing app features, and clearly this is where all of EarStudio's efforts went. But the BTR5? Fiio took none of the cues from EarStudio. They didn't take a good idea and run with it. Instead, Fiio took the good idea and design that they saw in the EarStudio app and totally ruined it. I hate to say this, but I much prefer the W3 scaled-down app to Fio's. This is because at least with the W3 app, I can actually connect to my device hassle-free. The Fiio app is an all-in-one idiotic solution. It's the iTunes of mobile music applications. The Fiio app plays your local music. It stores your device list. It connects to your Bluetooth Fiio device. It controls each Fiio Bluetooth device. And it does none of these things particularly well. I found using the Fiio app completely pointless. I connected the BTR5 to my iPhone through the settings app on my phone. It was the same scenario when using the LG V30. Then I went to the Fiio app. This is where the frustration began. The Fiio app is not designed for the BTR5 or any of its other Bluetooth devices. The Bluetooth control feature was ham-fisted in. You have to click on the settings option in the app, then scroll all the way to the bottom to select the Bluetooth devices. Once you click on this, you'll be taken to a new page. This new page will show you all of your Fiio Bluetooth devices. Except, the Fiio app believes your Fiio device is not connected, even after you've successfully connected to your mobile device. Then you have to click on the Fiio device icon, the one that says disconnected. It takes you to another page that tells you that the device isn't on and you should press the power button momentarily. What does momentarily even mean? I understand if it tells me to hold down a button for 1 second or 2 seconds or double tap a button, but to hold it down momentarily? So, like a logical person, I held down the power button for a few seconds. That turned the BTR5 off. I restarted the BTR5 and reconnected to my phone and tried again, and once again I had to perform the same ritual with the Fiio app. But there's a trick. When you go to the Fiio app and select the Bluetooth devices option, you apparently will always be shown an icon of the BTR5, and that icon will always say that the device is not connected, and you will always have to click that icon so that the app can always take you to another page that says you should momentarily press the power button, and you should always not press the power button. Instead, you must always click the cancel button on the app, which will then always take you back to the previous page where miraculously your BTR5 will now show as connected. This is the process every single time. It happened on my iPhone 11. It happened on my iPad Pro. It happened on my LG V30 for the first few times, then stopped, and then happened on random occasions. Luckily, this process occurs only when you connect your BTR5 for the first time after it's been shut off. If you close the app or shut down the BTR5, you'll have to perform the same ritual sacrifice of your brain cells all over again. But wait, once you've gone through this stupid secret decoder ring nonsense, you'll quickly realize you wasted your time. The Fiio app is pretentious and useless. If you see a feature you don't understand and there's a question mark icon next to it, you can click on the icon to get an explanation. Except, clicking on the icon brings up a dialog box that stays on screen for about 2 seconds. I counted. There are blocks of text in some of these explanation boxes, and you can't read all of that stuff in 2 seconds. I tried this on every help icon I could find, and they all responded the same. Consequently, to read a dialog box, you will have to repeatedly hit the help icon as if you're playing Hungry Hungry Hippos. You can control the BTR5's volume from the app. The app has EQ. These filters pale in comparison to the plethora of filter options available on the ES100 app. And just like the filters baked into the BTR5, the ones in the app are just as bad. Every time you pick one EQ filter over another, there's an audible popping sound as the EQ switches. It's not painful to hear, but it is certainly not something you would expect from the most hyped Bluetooth amplifier that cost $150. None of the other Bluetooth devices have a similar popping sound. Not the W3, which costs $50 by the way, not the ES100, and not the UP4, which are both $50 cheaper than the BTR5. The app also has an audio tab. You click on it, and at first sight it appears to have lots of interesting functionality. Don't worry, it's not true. At the top, Fiio included an estimated output calculator. You can enter the headphone's load and sensitivity, and the app will tell you the output. I do not know how accurate this calculator actually is, and it's only useful for those who want to know how the BTR5 could potentially drive a specific pair of headphones. To everyone else, it's a meaningless gesture. Oh, and to put the icing on the cake, when you enter the values for the calculator, the keyboard stays on screen, which means that you cannot navigate back to the other page since the keyboard is taking up the spot where the navigation panel would be. In the audio page, you can control the BTR5's volume. You can also set the volume of tones and telephone calls. You can play with the low-pass filter, channel balance, and distortion compensation. You can also select one of 3 DAC clock divider levels. I kept clicking on the help icon so I could read the explanation about this. After all that repeated clicking, I realized that Fiio says that the DAC clock divider does something. They don't actually tell you what. And you should just select one for DAC mode and 1/4 for Bluetooth mode. Not particularly helpful. I selected all 3 back and forth and heard no difference at all. I also played around with the distortion compensation stuff. It does nothing. I suppose if you are experiencing audible distortion, then maybe this feature will be helpful, but who really knows? If I sound irritated, it's because I am. For my listening tests, I paired the BTR5 to my iPhone 11 and LG V30. I decided to use the Campfire Audio Andromeda. The Andromeda is a 12.8 ohm IEM and has an SPL of 115 decibel. The Andromeda, in other words, is an exceptionally sensitive and easily driven IEM. I use a 2.5mm MMCX cable and an adapter for the 3.5mm output. I used Amazon Music HD as my streaming source. I kept the volume on the iPhone and the V30 at 50%. There is some controversy that increasing your source volume beyond 50% will also increase Bluetooth distortion. Consequently, I didn't bother to going down this road. I first played the song The Pretender by the Foo Fighters. It seemed appropriate for the BTR5. I kept the EQ at flat. I started hearing very faint audio at volume number 8. At volume number 20, the music sounded like my speaker was in my bedroom under the bedsheets and I'm in the hallway. At volume number 31, the music got loud enough for me. It was the volume I think most people would listen to their song. The music got uncomfortably loud at volume number 45. In other words, using the balanced connection, I had to ratchet the volume to about 50% of what the BTR5 can provide while using one of the most sensitive IEMs available. I restarted the song. The second time around, I used the 3.5mm output. I heard faint music around volume number 11. The BTR5 got to comfortable volume around volume number 35. It got unbearably loud at volume number 54. I listened to other songs as well. I listened to some K-pop, hoping that maybe Asian songs might perform better on this Asian product. Unfortunately, the volume results were exactly the same as before. My biggest concern is that when using one of the most sensitive IEMs available, the BTR5 did not have power output to drive them over Bluetooth. This leads me to think that the volume number Fiio uses is a total gimmick and a distraction. Saying that the volume goes from 0 to 60 makes one think that the volume increases from 0 decibels to 60 decibels. That clearly is not true. When I used the HD6XX, 660S, and the NAD HP50, the results weren't any better. I had to max out the volume on the BTR5 for the HD6XX and nearly max out the volume for the 660S and the HP50, again, over Bluetooth. Of course, increasing the source volume above 50% helped, but this means that if you're trying to use full-size headphones, you're likely going to max out the volume on both your source and the BTR5. This is a poor showing as far as I'm concerned. You may like your music at lower volumes, or you may like it at higher volumes. Rest assured, either way, the BTR5 is not particularly good at driving your headphones. I could go on and on. The BTR5 is a fine Bluetooth streamer. It's an okay amplifier. But $150? There's absolutely nothing the BTR5 does better than the competition. It does not have the best build quality. I think that would go to the UP4 or even the W3, which in its simplicity is also robust. The BTR5 does not have the best sound quality. The slight sound differences amongst all the Bluetooth devices comes down to personal preference, really. The BTR5 is not the lightest. That's the ES100. The BTR5 does not have the best companion app. That easily goes to the ES100. The BTR5 does not have the greatest amount of amplification. That goes to the UP4. The BTR5 does not have the best preset EQ filters. That goes to either the UP4 or ES100. The BTR5 does not have better battery life than any of the others either. They all require a recharge after about 6 hours of use, of course depending on the volume. I simply cannot justify the BTR5's exorbitant cost. Why is it $50 more than the ES100 and UP4? Here's how I see the landscape. The W3 is the bare-bones Bluetooth amplifier that just works and works well. The ES100 has flaky build quality but hands down the best application with meaningful features. The UP4 is the most powerful and best built. And the BTR5 is a confused mess of half-baked ideas and gimmicks. The W3, ES100, and UP4 all have unique qualities that separate each of them from the others, but the BTR5 has no unique features. Well, that's not entirely true. The Fiio app is uniquely aggravating to use. The BTR5's buttons are uniquely frustrating in practice. The amplification is uniquely unimpressive. If it sounds like I'm ragging on the BTR5, well, the reason is that I'm ragging on the BTR5. It's not a bad product, but it's not a great product either. It's an okay product. Why should you spend another $50 on the BTR5 when the ES100 and UP4 are available? The full LED screen doesn't justify the price hike. The Fiio app is a broken mess. The button implementation on the BTR5 is not compelling. So what is it then? If you don't have a Bluetooth amplifier, why would you buy the BTR5 when the ES100 and UP4 are available for cheaper? And if you already have a Bluetooth amplifier, I certainly would not call the BTR5 an upgrade. This is the sad truth.